What is up, guys? Orbital-Pilot back here once again in the world of Warthunder. This time taking to the sky in the Yak 3. I know I believe, one or two videos on this plane up on my channel. In fact, I think it even might have been one of my plane versus plane episodes eons ago. But I wasn't really going to talk about the gameplay too much. I'm going to reference it to show what I'm talking about, but I kind of wanted to talk about Russian bias. And I was actually talking to one of my friends a couple days ago, and he was talking about how everyone talks about this, and I thought I would clarify a couple things, at least personally, about what I see in the game and why people think this Russian bias. I'll tell you why Russians are biased. Yeah, that was it. They're not at all. 0% Russian biased. And this happens a lot, especially in lower tiers, where you have stuff like the Yak 1, which, don't get me wrong, although I don't think it's biased, I do think the Yak 1 needs a tier raised a little bit, maybe by 0.3, or just a little bit more, because I do think it's a little bit, once again, not biased, it's just under-tiered. But yeah, a lot of people believe that the Russians are completely impenetrable. They're just these beings in the sky that cannot be beat. And in this match, I get into a really good dogfight with a Tempest pilot, something I was not expecting. And so I decided to use this gameplay to talk about it, because it kind of shows how and why not only are the Russians not overpowered, but a lot of times they are they're extremely easy to defeat. Now here's the thing. The thing about Yaks and stuff like the LA-5s, and actually a little bit less than the LA-5s, why people see these Russian planes is so powerful is because they fit into the meta of War Thunder so incredibly well. For instance, if you go to an American plane, you jump in the P-51, you have to climb for roughly 5 to 10 minutes before you can enter combat. Now, if you do things correctly and you use that altitude, you're extremely hard to beat. Here's the thing about Russians, though. You don't have to climb that much. First things first, they climb decently well, up into about 5,000 meters. They turn decently well. They do everything decently well. They are the jack of all trades, master of none in War Thunder. And the problem with that is so many people try to go and fight the Russians on their own terms. You don't want to fight a Russian on his own terms, because his terms are so incredibly wide. But they do have weaknesses. They don't perform well at high altitudes, especially not stuff like the Yaks and the lower tier Russian stuff. Now right here, I do want to bring this up. This was an excellent dogfight by this man, and thank you so much, because this does not happen very often. He's in a Vickers, which was honestly shocking how I didn't kill him even sooner than this, but it was an extremely good dogfight. But getting back on subject, they do have weaknesses. Like I said, altitude is one of their things. Spitfires, you will beat these guys in a turn fight. A lot of the times, you do have better firepower. Yeah, I'll take 2 Hispanos personally over the Russian cannons, no matter what, especially 23mm Hispanos any day over those. Americans, you have pretty much flamethrowers. In Russian planes, although they do go out sometimes, are fairly easy to light on fire. You also have top speed and much better dive speed. You can only go about 430 miles an hour in a Yak. Diving, it's not much better with the LAs, it's not much better with the I-185s. They're not very fast planes, especially at higher altitudes. So Americans, British, you have the superior top speed, and British, you have a better turning rate, at least in most of your planes. Obviously, in that Vickers, you did not, and that guy did extremely well living for as long as he did, so props to that guy. Now, as we can see, 2 American pilots up here, P-38 and an F-4U. The P-38 was a decent pilot. He actually had a chance, but he made a couple fatal errors. first things first is the guy was doing everything right. He pitched down on me when I pitched up, which I personally believe was the correct thing to do because of my airspeed. I probably would have extended away, but where he made his fatal mistake is when he dove down, he simply turned. You don't want to turn, you want to extend. Like I said, you guys have that higher top speed than any Russians, so use that to your advantage. Now, you'll actually see in a couple of my videos that Russians are one of my least spaded countries. I only have about half the tech tree, and that's because I find them ridiculously boring to fly. Straight up. Don't get me wrong, they're extremely easy planes to fly. In fact, I flew out 3 matches today for gameplay, and I died 0 times. So that was fairly impressive, especially when I don't get a whole lot of time to play Warthunder nowadays, and I'm still able to jump in and do really, really well against people that have probably been playing today for at least a couple of matches. So I've been talking about the advantage. Obviously, the Russians will go against the Japanese. Once again, Japanese have the advantage in both turning abilities and top speed on their Ki-84s. What you're seeing a lot of is, I'm saying a lot of advantages and things that other countries do better, and it's absolutely true. The Germans, once again, have top speed, and some of the BF-109s can even get in a fairly good dogfight, although I wouldn't recommend it. But you'll notice, across all Russians, is they have a couple of disadvantages against everybody. That's both speed and top speed and dive rate on most countries. Now, obviously, a Zero is not going to dive as well as a Yak, but that's a very limited. It's a very limited view of mine. These Russians are not overpowered by any way. Maybe I'll have a video coming out in a couple days showing just how, not useless, don't get me wrong, Russians aren't crazy strong if flown by a good team. But I've also seen Russians be wiped out extremely fast by a good British team, by a good American team, and in fact, I don't think I've ever had the Russians beat the Japanese. It seems like the Japanese always beat the Russians because the Japanese fight the Russians on the Russians' term, and they're one of the few countries that can normally actually beat Russia in a simple 1,500-meter dogfight. So, yeah, Japan seems to win a lot, and, it could be because of their spawns, but, So, yeah, Russian bias, guys, it doesn't really exist. Now, I don't hear it as much as I used to, because most people have come to recognize this, but for the few of you that haven't, just keep in mind, you're not going to go and beat the Russians if you're in a P-47 and you're dogfighting them at 2,000 meters. They're going to be quicker to accelerate, they're going to turn better, they have decent firepower, they're going to have every advantage. So don't go fight the Russians on their own terms. Make them come to you. For instance, on the other 2 matches I flew out today, both of the times my team, the Russian team, got to engage the enemy at around 1,500 to 2,500 meters. I was the only one above 5,000 meters. Now, luckily enough, there were people, in fact, 1 P-38 and 1 bomber there, but there should be more Americans and British at that altitude. I would not personally go if I was in a Spitfire and turn fight the Russians, especially when I have other advantages like speed, like climb rate. I would rather rely on those personal things. But guys, let me know what you think of this whole Russian bias thing. Why do you guys think that Russians are called overpowered in this game, when in reality, the specifications of their plane really show that they're not overpowered, really by any means. A couple of planes do need a down tier or an up tier, but I mean, that's really true with all nations. So guys, let me know what you think about all of this. Am I wrong? Because I might be. I mean, I kind of doubt it. But there's always that chance. And right here, I do wreck because, well, you shouldn't watch Top Gear and fly planes at the same time. But, it was worth it. It was worth it. Yeah, Top Gear is an awesome show, guys. Let me know if you watch it down below, too. And I will see you guys next time.